Hi friends and welcome back to the channel. I am Dr. Sudeep and in this video we will discuss about the concept of hormesis. Hormesis means that any substance which taken in small to moderate amounts will act as a beneficial thing or it will act actually as a medicine, whereas in higher doses will act as a poison. This is the basic concept of hormesis. It is a term which is used more in pharmacology and in toxicology. So here comes the basic concept of stress. So stress applied to our daily lives, say for example. So severe stress we all know is very bad to our body and it is actually shown to reduce lifespan of a human being as well. And how does it do? It has been known nowadays that if you have a chromosome which is a part of our human DNA and the chromosome has an end which is called as a telomere, and these telomeres, the longer is the length of a telomere, the more is the length or the longevity of that person. And it has been shown that stress will reduce the length of the telomeres. So shorter is the length of telomeres, the lesser will be the lifespan and less will be the quality of life, the duration of life. And here is the concept of hormesis, where what it essentially says is you just put yourself into mild stress or sometimes into moderate stress, and that is going to give you a lot of benefits. It can give you mental health benefits, it can give you physical health benefits, it can give you general well-being, and it can even give you a long and healthy life. So hormesis as a concept was first discovered or first developed by the German toxicologist Schulz in 1888, and what he found out was basically when he fed poison to the yeast plant in small amounts, it actually grew the yeast, whereas in larger amounts the yeast plant actually withered and it died. We can actually see it even in historical data where the king Mithridates, when he was hiding after his father was assassinated, was consuming small to moderate amounts of poison on a regular basis because he feared he might be poisoned by his enemies and he could die. You have even in nature the trees, when there is a small to moderate amount of winds which are blowing, it actually strengthens the tree. But obviously if you apply very severe stressor, like if there is a tornado or a very bad wind which is blowing, that is going to uproot the tree. Other examples are, in our daily life you have deadlines in your life, or you have exams, you have projects to complete at work, and if you have the exam date that or the project deadline, that acts as a stressor, and that stressor is going to then push you to do your best so that the best of your abilities will come out and you will be able to complete that project on time. Other example where it is utilized is in vaccinations. Vaccination is what? It is basically injecting the infective agent in very small amounts so that your body will recognize that stressor or that foreign substance and will produce antibodies, and this will be protective to you for future infections. The graph will tell you that it's always a U-shaped curve, and the top of the curve is where the maximum health benefits are. So if you give small to moderate amount of stressors to the body, then it will produce the maximum health benefits. But as you increase the amount of stressors, the health benefits start declining, and in fact you will have detrimental effects which will come up at this point in time. So you have to remember very clearly that the stressor has to be mild to moderate in nature and not very severe. As we've seen from examples, severe stress of any kind is not going to be helpful for any kind of organism. At the cellular level, what happens? So your cell has something called as the mitochondria. Mitochondria is basically the engine or the powerhouse of the cell. What it does is it is going to take the food and the oxygen, and what it is going to do is produce energy. This energy is in the form of ATP. Now when it is going to do this continuously, obviously there will be some byproducts of this particular process. These byproducts are going to be the harmful substances that are produced. So these could be the reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species, and many oxidative chemicals which can cause harm to your body. Now how does your body protect it against these kind of chemicals? It will basically start producing certain proteins which is going to basically control these harmful substances, or they are going to destroy these substances. So these regulatory proteins or these protective proteins could be heat shock proteins, they could be antioxidants, they could be growth factors. Next we come to the section of how can we achieve hormesis. So we've learned that what are the ways or the mechanisms of hormesis. We have even seen some historical evidence of hormesis. Now how do we actually achieve hormesis in our day-to-day life? So there are three main areas where you can focus on. One is the physical hormetic agents, one are the biological and nutritional hormetic agents, and the third are the psychological hormetic agents. So what are the first or the physical hormetic agents? So those are of four types. That could be exercise, it could be heat, it could be cold, and it could be ischemia. We shall go through each one of them. So first is the exercise. We all know that exercise is beneficial to us. It gives us a lot of benefits in terms of improving our musculoskeletal system, improving our cardiovascular system, improving our GI system or the digestive system, and even improving our neurological function. But there is a certain type of exercise called as a high intensity interval training. This high intensity interval training, or HIIT for short, is what it means is you take any exercise, any aerobic cardiovascular exercise, and what you do is you basically do a ramp up for 1 minute. Say if you are going to do a walk, so you start ramping up your speed for 1 minute, then you maintain your speed for 2 minutes. So you maintain the high intensity walk for 2 minutes. Then you come to your normal pace of walking, or you go to your comfortable pace of walking for the next 3 minutes. So when you are in that top 2 minutes of very high intensity, you should not be able to have a conversation with your say running partner or walking partner, or you should not be able to talk on the phone. That is how you will understand that you are doing the high intensity. You are so out of breath that you are not actually breathless, but you cannot even talk to somebody. So you ramp up for 1 minute, you maintain that pace for 2 minutes, and then you ramp down or go to your comfortable pace for the next 3 minutes. This you are supposed to do for a period of say 30 to 35 minutes. That is how a maximum time is given to any high intensity interval exercise, and this is acting as a hormetic agent when done in this particular time period. Next is the concept of heat. We know this very well. Our mothers, our grandfathers, and even doctors have been telling us you should get exposure to sunlight. Even newborn babies are told that they should get exposure to sunlight. Why? Because it produces vitamin D, or it stimulates the production of vitamin D in your skin. So it is the early morning sun, which is again small to moderate amounts of exposure, acts as a stressor and starts producing vitamin D in your skin. Third is exposure to, even in the heat, I can tell you, when you have a hot bath or when you go into a sauna, that also does the same effect. That stressor will again start producing certain beneficial proteins in your body, which will be beneficial to you. Then you come to the concept of cold, where you have the ice baths, or even you have the cryotherapy, where the athletes do cryotherapy, that is exposure to extreme low temperatures, and you might have seen even many cryotherapy centers around you. So what it essentially does is this extreme cold is going to then put a stress onto your body, which by the way of regulatory proteins will try to overcome this stress and make your body more stronger, so that it can overcome future stressors in a better way. So you are basically preparing your body for future stressors by giving it small to moderate amount of stresses, by giving it cold exposure. Then is the concept of ischemia. Ischemia is basically where you do breath holding exercises, you do what is called as the Wim Hof method of breathing. So this basically again is going to be acting as a stressor, and it is going to be improving your overall well-being. So how does fasting help us? So whenever we are doing intermittent fasting, or we do time restricted fasting, so which means that you eat in an 8-hour window and you fast for 16 hours. So what does it do is basically in those 16 hours of fast, for the first 12 hours you will have glycogenolysis, where the glycogen stores in the body will start reducing. Then you will have the concept of ketosis, where the fats will be broken down into ketone bodies, and these the fats will be broken down into fatty acids, and these fatty acids will be reduced into ketone bodies by the liver, and this will act as a source of energy. As you continue to increase the duration of the fast, you will start getting production of growth hormone. Growth hormone is a hormone of vitality. It is going to be basically making your skin tighter. It is going to give you overall feeling of youth and youngness. You start feeling more energetic when you start fasting after a day or two. Why? Because you start producing the cortisol, epinephrine and norepinephrine, because these are going to be then giving you more energy and vitality. There will be the concept of autophagy. What is autophagy? Basically the cell organelles know that their microorganelles within a cell are not functioning well. So only in a state of fast will they try to clear up the mess inside the cell, and with the help of lysosomes, which are the cellular organelles, take it out of the cell and tell the body that these are the waste materials inside me, I don't want it, I want new materials. When you fast, the bone marrow will start producing stem cells, which will be then utilized by these cells so that it can start producing the cellular organelles which it desperately needed. So this all happens in a state of fast. Also in a state of fast, you will have something called as a brain derived neurotropic factor, which is produced. What does this do? This goes into the neurons and it starts producing new neuronal connections, or new neurons are produced. So remember, assume that fasting can result even in new neurons being produced. There is even the concept of FOXO3 gene, which is upregulated, and that has got numerous multiple health benefits. Next comes the concept of biological and nutritional hormetic agents. So what are biological hormetic agents? This could be any infection you've had. So if you have an infection, you will get antibodies from that infection, or you will get immunity from that infection. So you will not either get that infection again, or if you get it, it will be in a much lower level. It is similar to what a vaccination does. So that is the biological hormetic agent. Nutritional agents are the fruits and the vegetables that we consume. Remember, the fruits and the vegetables which we are using, before the era of pesticides, the fruits and the plants also had to protect themselves from the pests. So how they would do this? They would start producing certain substances which would be harmful to the pests who would try to eat them. Now the same plants and the same fruits, when we are going to eat these phytochemicals or these antioxidants or the colored fruits and vegetables, like they say you should have as many colors on your plate as they say. So what is this meaning? You have these phytochemicals, you have these antioxidants of various colors which are basically going in your body. They are not giving you nutrition per se, but basically they are stressing your body in a mild to moderate amounts so that you can derive the health benefits indirectly. Next we come to the concept of the psychological hormetic agents. So what are the psychological hormetic agents? Any mentally challenging activity. It could be even learning a new language, which has been shown to activate multiple new areas or neurons in the brain, and it is even shown to delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease. You have any activity which requires focusing or attention or meditation, even the day-to-day stresses of our life. Coming to the point of mental stressors, whenever you have any mental stress put on your neurons, there will be a lot of calcium influx into the neurons, and this is going to start producing reactive oxygen species and certain bad products, and the body will then again through regulatory proteins try to control this, and it will start getting stronger and stronger. Remember, when you exercise your muscle, what it is doing is the muscle is actually getting injured and the muscle is trying to repair itself, and in that way it hypertrophies or it becomes bigger. So what it does to the muscle, or what exercise does to the muscle, is basically any mental activity will do to your brain. It is going to make your neurons more stronger, and it is going to start developing more and more connections. So this is basically the various hormetic agents which you can use: the physical agents, the biological agents, nutritional agents, the fruits and vegetables, and even your mental faculties. These all can be challenged, and you can get all the benefits of these hormetic agents in your day-to-day life. And what is the end benefit? You are going to basically have a more energetic life, more youthful life, longevity is there, and even the onset of diseases might get delayed for a certain period of time. Your cardiovascular health will be good, your musculoskeletal health will be good, there will be no sarcopenia. What is sarcopenia? When you are basically having the loss of muscle strength and the loss of muscle function, as it happens with old age. So that won't happen, because your muscles will retain their rigor, vitality and their strength, and even their power will be as good as what it was in your younger age. So basically, in summary, what you have to do is you have to try to put yourself into some sort of a physical, biological, nutritional and psychological stress in mild to moderate amounts to gain the maximum benefits. And as Nassim Taleb tells in his book Anti-Fragile, from fragile to robust to anti-fragile. So fragile is something which is going to basically completely crumble under pressure. Robust is something which will not get crumbled into pressure, but it will go back to where it was. It won't become more stronger. Anti-fragile is something where in presence of a stressor, it actually is going to get more and more stronger. So it is not going to get weak, it is not going to stay the same, it is actually going to get more and more stronger. So this is where we want to reach. From fragile, you want to go into anti-fragile, and these are some of the ways which you can do it. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you have been using some of these methods, do let me know what are your feedback from that, and I wish you all the best. Thank you and see you in the next video.